You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes.
Hey Scott, come see what I discovered while looking through this electron microscope.
I see some atoms, few electrons, and... Wait. Oh my, is that what I think it is?
It is. You're looking at the last little bit of goodwill audiences have for the MCU.
Incredible. I thought it was all gone.
This is the last of it. I bet there's enough here to justify a third Ant-Man movie with plenty left over to last us until Deadpool 3.
I have some notes.
Welcome everyone to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
At last. We've been teasing it all season.
And as we dive into the highs and lows that is the MCU, we are joined by our friendly neighborhood acronym as well. Just like the MCU, we got the fellas from Talking SMAC, superhero movies, animation, and comics. Josh and Alex are here. Hey, big guys.
Hey, I just want to say, I know you guys know a lot of super powered podcast people, and I just wanted to say thanks for thinking of me. I almost nailed it. Damn it. That would have been a great reference if I'd nailed it. Thanks for thinking of me. That's the line.
Well, thanks for thinking to be here. Cause we enjoy your podcast. Folks can check you out all over social media. Once again, that's Talking SMAC, SMAC. They were here for the Ant-Man or the Thor episode.
Yes, we are. We are here for the Ant-Man.
You are that too. Yes. Joined us for Thor. Also here for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. How's everybody's post Ant-Man life?
That's pretty much the same as pre-life, I guess.
It definitely changed nothing for me. My pre and post Ant-Man life, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly changed the hands on the clock.
That's fair.
From beginning to end.
I have less teeth.
Is that Ant-Man's fault, though?
Okay.
No. I don't know, man. Paul Rudd doesn't like criticism.
I did actually lose a tooth once watching a movie. Fun fact. I was crunching down on some popcorn and my molar just cracked right apart in the theater. And I was like, what is this incredibly hard thing in my mouth? Oh, and it's very sharp.
See, I will always remember my MCU experience started with, we went to the midnight showing of Iron Man opening night. And for some reason I got in my head that I want to make a chocolate cake beforehand. And I tried one of those skillet in the oven recipes. And so of course it finishes and I open the oven and look and go, oh, it's a skillet. I can grab it with my bare hand.
Oh boy.
So grabbed it midway up. I'm like, this is kind of hot. So we run out, head to the pharmacy, get some burn stuff. And I'm watching Iron Man at midnight with my left hand in the air, it pulsing with every heartbeat as I'm watching this going like, oh shit, they nailed it. This is great. Ow. Feel bad for the people behind me because I'm like constantly just look like I'm signaling a taxi. Just wait.
You're just moved by the spirit of Tony Stark.
Yeah, hell yeah. This man's going to the church of the MCU, baby.
In preparation for this episode, was this everyone's first time with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania? Or like me, did you also see it in theaters?
Theaters.
Theaters.
Saw it in theaters.
No theaters. Yeah. It's just been hard to get out to the theater with two like young kids, and then there was that whole pandemic thing. I have been able to get out to the theater, but when Ant-Man came out, it was just not a high priority. And I was like, I'll catch it on streaming at some point. And then I started to hear very middling or bad reviews for it, and my desire to see it kind of cratered. And so, yeah, this was, in fact, my first time watching it.
Now, Liam, having seen it twice, which experience was better, in the theater or at Scott's place with several children running around while we were watching it?
Well, with friends was fun. With you guys, I don't think we actually haven't watched many movies together for this podcast. Yeah. So I'd say neutral, on one hand, you've got the fresh-faced optimism of going to a new MCU movie in a theater. So I came out of it, pretty and positive. And then you think about it for more than 5 seconds and you're like, wait a minute, like most Marvel movies. And whereas with you guys, it was good to hang out, saw Scott's new home, met your families, just hung out in person, which we don't normally get to do. So, comparable.
The kids weren't that bad, honestly.
Yeah.
Scott, Greg asked, not me. I know.
Yeah, I was actually shocked at how well behaved they were during the entire run of it. Occasionally, I think they even got interested in the movie, but not for long. Just like me.
As I recall, your daughter actually applauded at the end.
Yeah,
she might have been applauding because it was over.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the movie's not that bad. I mean, it was.
No.
It was, it's probably one of the more inoffensive action movies that I've seen in recent times. And its greatest sin, I believe, is that I'm going to forget about it as soon as this podcast is over. Like, the only reason I'm keeping any of its factualness inside my head is to finish this show.
Yeah, it's definitely not as bad as I think I was kind of expecting it to be based on what I'd heard about it. That's not to say it was good. But it wasn't terrible. It was very watchable popcorn fluff.
It existed.
Alex, Josh, how'd you guys feel about it?
Well, it existed. You see, I went to a place, I sat in a chair, and when I got up from the chair, I wasn't dead. So that's actually not bad. I did not feel like, like I was being tortured. It was mostly just this feeling of benign neglect, as if suddenly something was taken from us, that Kevin Feige's eyes were looking towards something else, and this somehow escaped him. And then more movies have come out and TV shows that have all done the same thing.
Benign neglect is the exact movie we're always looking for this show.
Yeah, I don't know. This is another one of those disappointment movies where there's a lot of potential for what the MCU can grow beyond Endgame, and it just does the same MCU shtick, and it doesn't work. Like, I think. Well, so do we use the name of the actor in this situation, or should we just say Kang?
Sure,
we'll call him Kang for now.
We'll just call him.
Okay, Kang I thought he was fine. He was good, but it's still a poor representation of the character of Kang. And we'll get into it when we talk about our fixes. But he's basically just a telekinetic, and they're just like, oh, he's so scary.
Yeah, I wasn't really clear on what his powers were. And I guess we'll get into this after we go through the summary of the movie. But yeah, I was a little unclear of what he does and what his powers are.
To catch everyone up to speed, in case you haven't seen this particular Ant movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania came out February 17th of 2023, so it's about a year old. Directed by Peyton Reed, formerly of Ant-Man fame. Written by Jeff Loveness, of Rick and Morty fame, and based on the insect Formicidae. Cast is Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Ant-Man, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Van Dyne, the Wasp, Michael Douglas as Dr. Hank Pym, Michelle Pfeiffer as Janet Van Dyne, that guy as Kang the Conqueror, and Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang.
See, actually, I find it interesting is you announce who wrote it. The first two movies were co-written by Paul Rudd. And while he hasn't written very much other than writing role models, I really think that you can see you can really feel the lack of his polish on the script.
Mm.
Yes,
Interesting.
The humor doesn't seem quite as sharp. Yeah,
There's also like 5 recurring characters from the previous 2 Ant-Man movies who do not appear in this film in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And at least 3 of them are glaring omissions.
Oh yeah.
Like I can accept Scott's ex and her new husband not being in the movie, although they're fun.
Sure.
But the 3 ex-cons that Scott works with not being there is a glaring omission.
I mean, that was the meme going around. I am so excited to see him recap Endgame for us as we head into this movie.
Yeah, they're kind of the crew that sort of they hung those other 2 movies off of, right? Yeah, so it does. Yeah,
they were the comedic troupe.
Yeah,
and Luis being absent from that entire movie is just glaring, and it's part of the heart that's kind of missing, because Luis, for lack of a better term, is kind of like Scott's puppy, who just is like, he's my best friend, he's the greatest guy in the world, and we're gonna go have an adventure and it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna almost die, but it'll be great because I'm doing it with my buddy Scott. Like, he's just that ball of energy that's carrying a lot of the emotional weight of the movie, because he's the one having fun and he raises that fun level for the audience.
Yeah, they managed to get Randall Park for a cameo, but they couldn't get the ex-con guys in there. That seems weird to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, even for a cameo, just acknowledge that they're still around and kind of part of Scott's life, but no, they're just missing, and that was strange to me.
Mm-hmm. Scott, you want to hit us with that plot summary, please?
You're an interesting man, Scott Lang. You're an Avenger. You have a daughter. But you've lost a lot of time, like me. We can help each other with that. Who are you? I'm the man who can give you the one thing you want. What's that? Time. Let me make this easy for you. You will bring me what I need, or everything you call a life will end.
Scott Ant-Man Lang has become a popular celebrity and best-selling author since he tangled with the doomsday forces of that infamous Purple Goblin. He barely even superheroes anymore, much to the chagrin of his daughter, who's dedicated herself to helping the victims of the blip. At a family dinner with Hank, Janet, and Hope, Cassie calls out Scott for his disinterest in helping those in need. Cassie then reveals she and Hank are working on a communication device to talk to the quantum realm for some reason. Janet screams to turn it off because the quantum realm is a dangerous place, a fact I guess she forgot to mention when she helped send Scott there before the snap. Now that's quite a brain fart. Or maybe this is an alternate universe. Who even knows anymore? Anyway, it all goes tits up and everyone is sucked into the quantum realm, including all of Hank's hyper-intelligent ants. Separated from Hope, Hank, and Janet, the Langs meet a group of rebels fighting against a tyrannical ruler named Kang. They learn that Janet played a role in Kang's rise to power. Meantime, after narrowly escaping capture by an old acquaintance, Janet confesses she and Kang once worked together to escape the quantum realm using his multiversal power thingamajig. But it turned out that Kang sucked, so she decided to betray him. She then used the powers of embiggening to render the thingamajig useless, leaving Kang stranded. Now captured by Kang, Scott is given a choice to recover the thingamajig or watch his daughter get tortured to death. It's a tough choice. After some lengthy probability shenanigans and a timely save by Hope, Scott insmallens the multiverse power sphere and returns it to Kang. But, gasp! Kang reneges on the deal. He captures Janet with the help of his henchman MODOK and destroys Hank's ship. Hank is rescued by the hyper-intelligent ants. Remember them? They apparently traveled through time and have evolved over the eons. Sure, why not? Along with the ants and the rebels, Scott, Cassie, and Hope defeat Kang and use the thingamajig to teleport home.
I really, when I was watching this, I did not feel like the plot was particularly complicated. So when I sat down to write the plot summary, it got long very quickly, to my surprise. There's a lot going on in this movie, and I did not expect that as I was scripting it out.
Yeah, there's quite a few like plot beats along the way, and many of them are not super necessary.
Yeah,
like it feels like there's a lot of padding.
Yeah, there are two parties basically meeting the two factions at cross purposes in this realm, and we get almost a full movie for each adventuring party. Maybe we could have collapsed it, but yeah, there's, Hope, Janet, and Hank, and then Cassie, Scott, and the Rebels.
They were really hoping to do The Empire Strikes Back, and they failed completely at making that interesting. Because I can totally see them going like, okay, they're going to get to this cool new world. They're going to the bar. And then we're going to have like our Lando character show up. Who do we go? Bill Murray. Suave Bill Murray. That's who we get for our Lando character. And we are doing The Empire Strikes Back. Gotta have a betrayal in there. And it doesn't work.
Yeah. I think that's interesting that you mentioned that, because Scott's wife throughout the entire watching was saying, this is a Star War. This is a Star War.
It does feel very Star War.
They have the cantina scene, and it's
someone gets Landoed immediately.
Hank is flying a spaceship for most of the movie.
Yeah. What I was going to say earlier, and part of the two-party system that they have going on in this movie, the conflict is the same. You have the parental child conflict of like, you're not who you were. You're not telling me things. You're not telling me all the things that I need to hear from you. And that's a big problem with this, because it's like Hope's whole thing is that Janet refuses to talk about the quantum realm. And it feels extraordinarily manufactured and forced, because it's like, this conflict is only happening because this movie is happening. This is a conversation that should have happened over the course of the last few years. Granted, in the MCU timeline, Janet has maybe been around for a few months, and then she gets blipped, and then she comes back for an indescribed amount of time before this movie happens. And it just, that conflict, let alone what's going on with Scott and Cassie, is just so forced, because again, it only exists because the movie is happening, and the movie needs it to exist.
Yeah. And there are points in the movie where I was legitimately frustrated with Janet's unwillingness to just say what was going on, because it had come to the point where it was clearly very important for Hank and Hope to know what was happening, and she was still just being like, I'm not going to talk about it. And it's like, why?
Yeah. There's no reason I
can forgive her not talking about it for all the months we didn't see her on screen, but once you're in the shit, you need to spill the beans.
It's like that old sitcom thing where people could just solve their problems by two people who have a misunderstanding just talking to one another, and they just don't.
Though I also like what Josh said about the sort of duality of the two parties being this like parent-child relationship honesty thing. And I love that insight. I hadn't even picked up on that. And I think the reason I didn't pick up on it is because they're both kind of the same, as opposed to being complements to each other. Like showing that dynamic from two perspectives. They just kind of show it from the same perspective. Even that's generous. None is a perspective. Like it's something,
Yeah, because the kid is in the right.
It does not go deep on that.
Yeah, the kid is in the right. The parent is in the wrong. And the movie does not even take a second to be like, is the child potentially wrong in this situation? Like, no, Janet should be more forthcoming with Hope, especially considering they're in the quantum realm. And then Scott should be a little bit more invested in what's going on with Cassie, as just being a good parent. But to give the movie I guess a little bit of credit, even though it's not really a lot of credit, the conflict between Scott and Cassie is also so poorly defined that like I don't even really know what the conflict is after watching this movie twice.
Yeah, it was this sort of half-baked, like, you gotta help people who need help, you know, even if just because you can't, it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening, which is like, you know, they spend 5 seconds deliberating on that when they meet the rebels, and then they're like, well, we brought danger to their front door, so now it is happening to us, so we're gonna help them. Like, he doesn't get to sit in that, he doesn't get to, you know.
This is not specifically one of my fixes, so I'm going to spill this here because it is something that I toyed with. I think it's even something that we discussed after the movie. It would have been interesting if that relationship dynamic between Scott and Cassie had been a little more about Cassie, not just Cassie wanting Scott to be more heroic and to step up and use his position to help people who need help. In not just a punching the bad guy way, but if Scott's take on it was also more defined and was, you've been in jail. I don't want you to end up like me. I was a criminal and you're breaking the law. And then for the resolution to maybe come from him coming to understand that the law can be wrong when faced with a tyrant. And I think that would have been an interesting development, and that would have been an interesting conflict for them. But they kind of half-assed it, as Liam said,
or abandoned it. Yeah,
or abandoned
it does feel
it kind of ends just partway through.
Yeah, it feels, because once he gets to the quantum realm, he's doing plenty of Ant-Man stuff. He's not resigned to do it. There's no conflict there about being a hero again. So that it doesn't really track with what they've set up in the opening.
Are we going to talk about MODOK?
Do we have to right now?
I will
about
say
wasted
that, like,
potential.
Can I just quickly mention just something about the special effects on MODOK? Because, I mean, obviously the criticism is that it looks like they just, like, took a face into Photoshop and then just used the bounding box tool to expand his face. That's what it looks like a lot of the time. But at certain points in the movie, especially right at the end when he kind of, like, there's a shot where he gets punched by something, and there's a kind of like a close up side view, and at that point you get to see, like, what was kind of intended with the character. Like, there's a lot of detail in his face. It's very cartoony, but also being realistic at the same time.
Very detailed.
So I was wondering to myself whether, it looked bad only because of how we read faces, and we just read that face as looking weird, when it's depicted as realistic, especially when it's like head on. And that it wasn't necessarily the fault of the animators that it didn't end up looking that great.
I really think it's a case where the MCU went, you know what, we're going to do Seth Rogen a solid here and show them how not to do Krang for the next Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That's truly what I think it is. But to your point, no, this is not a problem with the animators. This is a problem with the expectations of the studio and not listening to the animators about what they wanted. You can see that they did not know exactly what they wanted out of the character, which is why in some cases it looks good, in other cases it looks off. And they never settled on a stylized vision for the character. Is what I'm thinking. And that's why you get, like, conflicting shots of, okay, this one might look good, this one might look bad, because you have so many different studios, because they outsource, like, specific scenes to dozens of different studios. And you never got a unified vision of someone going, this is the character, and it's defined across all spectrums.
I wonder too if it's just a matter of, like, they wanted you to see the actor. Whereas, like, if they had let him really make this detailed, gnarly CG puppet voiced by that guy and still have the flashback, but really give him, like, just have him be another CG character. There's already, like, a guy with a laser for a head. But they've got that actor's face as opposed to just, like, letting, having him voice it, make it kind of like his likeness, but make it all mushy potato faced.
Yeah. I think you're right in that. I think it would have been well served if they had made MODOK look much more grotesque. If he was more Krang-like, if you will, I think that would have dialed down in a sort of a counterintuitive way the uncanniness of it.
Yeah. MODOK is such a hard character to translate, and I think part of the problem also is that they locked in on the battle mode design, like when he has the visor down and you just see like the angry face that blends kind of in with the chair. And they were just like, do whatever. He's a giant head. Just fill in the head there and go.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is the battle mode thing looks sick. And I think they would have got a lot of mileage by leaving that on him, having him be this menace, having all of us comic nerds who know is usually his dumb face. They just done MODOK with they've just done MODOK with a face mask. And then when the reveal happens later in the movie, it's this like, moment, right? Oh, it was the Yellow Jacket all along. Oh, it's that actor. But they tip the bit immediately and then make us look at a terrible version of this actor's face.
Yeah.
You're kind of right. It wouldn't have been so bad if we'd had his face less often. If they had just saved it for a big reveal at the end, even if it looked weird and uncanny, it probably would have been a little more forgivable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when Deadpool takes off his mask, it's like only for a second because he's so ugly, he puts it back. That's why he wears it, right? Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem too, though, is that they did not know what they wanted to do with MODOK. They just know he's a goofy character who can be a threat, but in general, he's just a giant head in a rocket chair, essentially. And so they were like, let's just make fun of him the whole time instead of making him a menace, even though the first time he's ever introduced, he is supposed to be the right-hand man of Kang.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say we should jump right into our fixes because I do think we have a lot, but I do want to have everyone go take a moment and sing one praise of this movie because as we said off the top, it's not bad. It really, I think, got a bad rap online. My theory personally is that this isn't any better or worse than the average MCU movie. It just happened to come out the same time everyone decided Marvel movies weren't cool anymore. This wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just the first victim of a shift in the cultural zeitgeist. Whatever movie had come out February 2023 was going to get eaten alive by people who have just decided the MCU is not cool anymore.
We've been waiting since 2014 for an MCU movie to be bad. I remember so many articles about like, is Guardians of the Galaxy going to be the movie that breaks the MCU? Mm-hmm. And no, they had almost 10 more years of legs left going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to the special effects again, just and the production design, because the one thing that I did really appreciate about this movie was that there was actually a lot of really cool character designs. The guy with a laser for the face, that was awesome. I loved that a lot. Mm-hmm. And there was lots of cool ships, really cool aliens. The little guy that had an obsession with holes or whatever, he looked interesting. And overall, I appreciated it. The only drawback was the way that Marvel films a lot of this stuff. They shoot pretty loose so that they can make a lot of decisions in post, and that for me anyway kind of ruined some of the action scenes just because you really felt the staginess behind all the cool computer animation that was going on, which I think they did a relatively good job on, considering usually what time constraints they're under. I actually thought for the most part the effects looked pretty good. But yeah, you could tell there's a scene at the end where Kang and Ant-Man are fighting inside that room where the portal was. And you can immediately see the way that the camera's swinging around and stuff like that. It's like, oh, they're on a set now. They're on a set, and they had a plan about how they wanted the action to go. And it was like, oh, yay, this is exciting. The camera's doing interesting things instead of just being flat. So, yeah.
I quite liked I know we were kind of dumping on the conflict between Cassie and Scott, but I thought that the chemistry between the two of them was rock solid. I believed that she was the same girl that we'd seen in the previous two movies. Like, without missing a beat, the two of them clicked as like father and daughter. They had big father-daughter energy the whole movie. And I mean, one thing that Ant-Man has had going for it the whole time has been like really solid casting, and all of the actors are doing good work here with what they've got. So I have no real qualms there right across the board, really, except for, of course, some, in hindsight, poor casting choices. But
oh yeah,
I'll piggyback off what Scott just said. The familial chemistry that Paul Rudd exudes in this movie is fantastic, and I think that the scene where he's in the multiverse engine thingamajig and he's just like producing different probabilities of different Scotts, and at one point I think Cassie radios to him and they all just come together and they do the like rarely seen ant pyramid where they just start piling on top of each other to kind of lift the prime Scott up to get the multiverse engine. I thought that sequence was really good. The visual effects were really well done, and I believe, having been through this journey with Scott through two other movies plus a couple of Avengers movies and Captain America Civil War, that any version of Scott, the minute Cassie comes into play, they would bond together and just make whatever needed to have happen, make it happen.
Well, Alex mulls his good thing. I'm
Alex
actually going to go to bat. Going to go to bat for the super intelligent ants. As Deus Ex Machina, dumb, ace up our sleeve plays go. I like that they found a way to include ants in the Ant-Man movie. And I liked how they got involved so much that unfortunately it's a bit of a criticism. I wish there was more of it. The idea that time doesn't work the same way in this quantum realm, and there's like levels to it, right? Like there's layers. And so that if these ants got stuck on like a different kind of like spectrum of size and then therefore time, they would have generations to become this hyper intelligent warrior race to come save the day in this very Inception. Like there was like this Inception-iness to it that I kind of liked. And all that is ever said about it is Scott goes, "What about your mother, Cassie? We don't know how time works down here. Could be a day, could be 5 years. We got to get you back." And I'm like, I wanted more of that kind of like soft to medium sci-fi nonsense. Mm-hmm. Especially considering, and I'm sure we'll get into this with the notes, the idea that if this character can shrink really small down to the size of an atom, possibly, and grow to the size of a building, that putting him in a subatomic world and then having him grow 10 times as big as Kang is still like, that's kind of funky. And I can see why they didn't want to get hung up on that. And in lieu of that, I want other layers to sort of play a factor.
Yeah.
I will say I do like how Hank totally downplays the hyper intelligent ants at the end, where he shows up and everybody looks at him for an explanation, and his answer is just, "I like ants."
Yeah.
I will say that the ants upset me only because the battle armor looked so good. I'm like, that could be on a Dino Rider.
So I will use my blanket get out of jail free card that the best thing of the movie is Michelle Pfeiffer, because
Sure.
I was like 7 and she was in Batman Returns, and I've never given up my love for her. Aside
she's still got it.
I still love her.
That's how I feel about Ruben Rabasa, the guy at the Baskin Robbins who's like, "It's the Spider-Man."
But there are actually two things with Kang that I actually enjoyed. One is I hardly ever feel that an MCU villain is actually intimidating or terrifying. We have Michael Keaton in Homecoming just straight up pulling a gun on Spider-Man, and you actually think that Spider-Man's in trouble. When he is giving that little speech to Scott with the whole, like, which one are you? Are you Thor? I've killed so many of you before. I don't even remember. That actually was like, okay, this is interesting. They're giving backstory. They're giving context that this person doesn't even give a crap about which one this is. I've wiped the floor with you 1,000 times. Just give me the name. I'll figure out how to defeat you. The other one is, a while back ago, I actually rewatched the first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, and they're bloody. There's gore. Peter is beat to heck. At one point, the Green Goblin punches him, and he spews blood all over the floor. You have the second one with the horrifying Doc Ock scene. And to actually have a fight that ends up in fisticuffs, which is kind of ridiculous that Kang would get into a fist fight with anyone. I mean, he's supposed to have all these powers. But to get Scott being thrashed and bleeding, I was like, holy crap. The MCU finally remembers that, yeah, heroes bleed. He's only got a suit. He's not, Captain America. He doesn't have an iron, suit around him. He's just got his Ant-Man suit that's damaged. He's going to bleed. And I, for a brief moment, was like, oh, they're going to beat the hell out of Paul Rudd and kill him. That's how they're going to introduce Kang. He's going to curb stomp Ant-Man and go through that portal. And that's how we introduce, this is the new threat. I have now killed off one of the Avengers, and I'm walking through that damn portal. Did that happen?
After just talking about how I wiped the floor with them in all timelines. Yeah. That let's file that under fixes, because that would have been a hell of an ending.
Yeah. I thought that's what would happen. It didn't, but I was happy to see that there was blood and stakes in 2 brief moments before they pulled back and said, we're saving that death for Kang Dynasty.
But are they?
Before we hit break, sorry, Liam, I just wanted to mention one thing, which is like Ant-Man is fundamentally like a movie about scale, right? And we were previously talking about like how in the Liam was mentioning in the quantum universe, there's some like, I don't know, it doesn't feel as like scaly because they're in this little time. They're in a place where you don't really know what the scale is, I guess is what I'm saying. Because it's like a completely alien universe. So you don't get all that fun stuff that you get in the first 2 movies about like things you understand and look at, like buildings, cars, whatever, blowing up big or shrinking really small and things like that. So for me, that was like one of the things about this movie that didn't work and didn't make it fun. Like the powers of the character felt blunted because of it. I don't know. It's unfortunate, but like I don't want to say that they shouldn't have told the quantum realm story, because it's kind of an interesting sci-fi story, but it does have its drawbacks.
And with that, we will take a quick break and get into our fixes.
I'd like to get more reading done, and joining a book club seems like a good idea, but I don't know.
Why not?
Reading a whole book in a month, that's pretty daunting.
What if it was just a chapter, say a week?
That doesn't sound too bad. Still, getting together with a bunch of people, that's a whole evening.
Well, what if it was only half an hour, whenever you wanted to?
That would be great.
The Read Along, a mini book club for your ears.
Join my wife, Anita,
and my husband, Scott,
as we take you on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time. Available right now on your podcatcher of choice.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We're joined by Josh and Alex of Talking SMAC, and we are talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We're going to get into our fixes here. I'm going to start off with one. Mostly there's a question I just want answered. Maybe you guys can answer it, but I would have preferred if the movie did. Why was that Kang exiled?
Because he won.
Reasons.
I think he implies that he was the Kang who beat all the other Kangs, and they had to team up to exile him from time and space.
Like, I've watched all the Marvel things, and I'm still unclear. Like, Loki's, the other, neither of you have given me a satisfying answer. I don't know what he did wrong. Like, when I saw it in the theaters, I thought, I'm like, is he the goodest one? Did they, like, he's either the worst Kang or the best Kang, but either way, they had to get rid of him for Kang reasons. I wanted it explained.
Yeah, it's a question that I think does. It is I don't know what the answer is, because he seems willing to make deals on certain things, because he's like, hey, Janet, you help me get out of here and I'll leave your timeline alone. And he keeps making the same bargain to Scott and everyone else. But he's like, is he who remains, or is he just one who's willing to go beyond what the council is advocating that the Kangs go to? It's a little too vague.
Actually, I will say, I think the vague. Let me rephrase that. I will say that I think it's intentionally meant to be vague, whether or not it was good that Scott defeated him, because he even has that existential moment at the beginning, or at the end rather, where he's like, oh, wait, he was saying that he was the only reason something worse wasn't coming. Should I have beaten that guy? Now that he's gone, are we in trouble? Nah, it'll be fine. Do. So I think the fact that it was vague may have been intended to play into that. Maybe he was the good Kang.
Yeah.
But he'd been trapped for so long, and he was so
Kang.
Yeah, and he was so desperate to get out that he had done terrible things. And it makes sense to me that even the best Kang is still a terrible villain.
But isn't that
but
isn't that the ending of Loki season 1? The Loki end of
Oh,
Loki
the
season
he
1,
who remains.
yeah, kind of.
Yeah, because he even says, like, if like you kill me, he's coming. So,
Yeah, it is kind of a rehash of that then.
Maybe it's intentional vagueness on Marvel's part, because they're just like, which one is the Kang that's going to restore the timeline?
Yeah.
I have a question, because I'm not a Marvel person. Are all those other versions of Kang, are those from the multiverse, or are there just like multiple versions of Kang that exist in a single universe?
they're multiverse. The Council of Kangs is basically kind of like a meetup area where they all come together from their own timelines.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're all the baddest bitch in their timelines, and then they get together to do, badass stuff collectively
It's
across the
literally the
multiverse.
Citadel of Ricks.
I don't know, when I saw that post credit sequence, I was like, oh, more multiverse stuff, really? I don't want to go through this anymore.
It's the multiverse saga.
He's the multiverse bad guy. Like, he's in the MCU, or in the Marvel Comics universe, he's the multiverse guy. In fact, I think there's even like a version of him in the comics where he's Reed Richards, or like
he's a descendant of Reed Richards.
A descendant of Reed Richards, yeah. Like, it's a time and space thing where, like, the inevitable entropy of infinite possibilities represented by a guy with laser face. For the meat of this movie, what do you guys got?
Well, if I can jump in, mainly because I want to kind of pull on the thread that Greg had brought up at the end of the first half. I too have seen many criticisms of the movie being about, like, the part of the fun of Ant-Man is that he gets small and he gets big, and you get to see him be small next to stuff that's also small, and you get to see him be big next to stuff that's also big. And that gives you not only the sense of scale, but that's part of the fun of his power set. And when you have him in a completely CGI alien world, you completely flub that. You lose it. You lose all of the weight of his powers. And so I wanted to find a way to resolve that. And I think I hit upon an idea that also makes the party split a little more interesting, which is, what if Hank and Janet and Cassie didn't go to the quantum realm?
Okay.
You have Scott and you have Hope get sucked into the quantum realm so that they can have their Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania adventure. While the B plot is Hank and Janet and Cassie trying to get them back. So you have this B plot still on Earth. You have Hank give Cassie a suit. That's where we get the explanation of where her suit came from, because they need to get something to fix the majigger on their end that can bring them back. And then Cassie gets to go out and have a fun, big and small adventure in the real world with the ex-cons, Scott, the rest of Scott's crew helping her out. And that's your B plot. And it separates out the split in the party in the quantum realm. It saves Hank from just having to like pilot a ship for the entire movie, and it gives Ant-Man and the Wasp more to do against Kang.
And if I can add this, we get Michelle Pfeiffer spilling the beans on why Kang's a bastard to no one but Hank in our reality outside of the machine.
Yeah.
Some dramatic irony where Scott and the Wasp, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, don't know what they're up against. Michelle Pfeiffer does on the outside, telling Hank, telling Michael Douglas.
But they can't get that information to them until Cassie fixes the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that solves a lot of the power issues, because then we get to still see the big and small powers. I think it splits the party in a more interesting way. And I think it automatically gives Hope more to do down in the quantum realm.
Yeah, and it forces Janet to actually spill the beans in a way that makes sense as well, instead of, as we discussed earlier, we're in the quantum realm. I'm still not going to talk about my time here because it's too traumatic, and I'm back here now and I got to zone in on what we're doing.
But now she's telling Hank and Cassie because they need to know so that they can save the people in danger.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Can I piggyback on one more thing on that too?
Yeah.
They get down there, they meet these rebels. Maybe the Wasp is singularly focused on getting out of there. And Scott would be too if he didn't have this thing rattling around in his head of his daughter going, just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. And literally he's got to be like, Cassie's not here to remind me to help these people, but I gotta tell her, I can't go back out there and tell her I left these people to die. And it's like, thematically, what a tiny problem. It literally is in a world that is infinitely smaller and almost does not exist. It would be so easy to just ignore the problems of the quantum realm. They're tiny. They're very tiny problems.
Yeah.
But they are going to grow if they are left unchecked.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's a really great way to expand upon that part with Cassie being in his ear about being a hero again.
Yeah. I'm sort of mad at this because it's so good that it kind of cancels out what I wanted to say, but because I was primarily focused on Scott's emotional arc, and I thought it would have been really interesting to have the end of Endgame affect that character, so that he sees Tony Stark die, who leaves a daughter behind. And that instills in him an enormous fear of going out and continuing to be a superhero, because eventually, even for superheroes, your number turns up. And he just can't get over the idea of leaving Cassie alone,
Again.
Exactly. Like the ultimate, I've gone away and I'm never coming back kind of thing. Right. And that is why he's not a superhero anymore. And that is what creates all the tension between, him and Cassie, and she doesn't really, he's not talking about it. And and maybe he's not even fully aware of why he feels that way until later in the film, but I think that would set up like a really nice tension, and it could create like a whole bunch of tension throughout the movie where he is continually ducking his hero responsibilities and like not helping the rebels and things like that, so that his pure focus is to get himself out of the quantum realm, either so that he can get back to Cassie in your version, Scott, or in a version that more closely resembles the movie proper. He's trying to keep Cassie out of danger continually, right?
Yeah, I like that a lot because it adds a lot to the mask of celebrity that Scott is leaning into as well. Like the movie just passes it off as like, oh, he's a lovable goofball, and he's just enjoying the celebrity of life and getting what's owed to him. But in your version, the celebrity is a safety net.
Yeah, exactly. And it'd be so great to have this character who's normally so comical and funny to have this enormous amount of frailty underneath everything. And I think that would have made for a really meaty role for Paul Rudd.
That's a very believable motivation for him too, because he's already spent so much time in jail and missed her when she was very young, and then he spent 5 years blipped and missed her growing up. He's missed so much of her life already, and he's terrified of missing more of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's of all of the Marvel characters, that is a very believable fear for him to have.
Yeah. The other thing I had was MODOK. Is sort of the opposite to what Liam said in the first half, where I kind of actually envisioned him as being like kind of a mask off character, where he's always mask off. I mean, literally, like he's always that goofy face, and he looks dumb, and he's kind of like this comic relief throughout the entire film, and maybe he's sort of like playing along he's working for Kang, but he's sort of playing along with Scott and Cassie and Hope. And then I just love the idea of this turn at the end where the first time you see that evil mask of his is right when he betrays them, and it just like comes down, and then things just get fucking serious, because this character that looked goofy and stupid throughout the entire movie suddenly is an existential threat. And I just like that contrast, and I think that would have been fun.
Well, you guys are making
honestly,
me and Alec.
In my version of the movie, I don't think even has MODOK in it, but you could still have him in there to fight Scott and Hope as a mini boss, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, Alex and I collaborated on our rewrite, and we basically went, let's just do a Star War. This movie is already kind of half-assing a Star War, so let's just do a Star War. So in our rewrite, we keep the first like 15 minutes the same, everything going into the quantum realm. I think one thing that needs to be fixed is explaining why they get sucked in, because it's basically just it's a radio going down into the quantum realm. So how they get portaled in there makes no sense. So like maybe they're pulling samples or something as well. Like that's part of what they're trying to do. And
yeah, now that you mention it, if Kang could open a portal to suck them in through the radio, why couldn't he have followed the radio wave back out to
exactly.
escape? Wow. That just blew my mind. Oh my God. That makes no sense.
But in our version, Hank gets left behind and he kind of has his own adventure. He gets to be Ant-Man one last time, kind of what you were alluding to with your rewrite, Scott. But in this case, we have Janet, who's taking on more of like a Rick O'Connell from the 1999 Mummy movie. Instead of her being like, I can't tell you, I won't tell you, we're just going to move on. Rick is now, he's never really forthcoming with what he knows, but when it comes time to do what needs to be done in the situation, he's like, hold on. And he just kind of like take 2 steps to the left, spikes come up, and he just knows. And he's not going to tell anyone about it because like he doesn't want to talk about it, but he's not going to put anyone in harm's way because of it. So Janet becomes kind of the Han Solo, Rick O'Connell kind of type. Or I guess more Obi-Wan, because she's the mentor person since she's been there before. Yeah. Hope is essentially Chewbacca, because again, in our rewrite, she doesn't get a whole lot more to do, but she's there. Scott is Han because he's suave and whatever. And then Cassie is Luke. It's her first adventure. She's going out there and learning the ropes. Hank is 3PO. He just does whatever, and he's fixing the portal so he can bring them back. With a lot of what we do, though, we have MODOK being a Darth Vader type. He can still be kind of goofy. He takes the mask off, and they're just like, I can't take you seriously like this. Like, what are we supposed to do with a giant head?
Like a dark helmet kind of situation.
There you go. But like you have Kang kind of ominously in the background of throughout the movie, and he has to obviously be the big bad, and you have to set up the MCU in that sense. But a lot of what Alex and I discussed leans more into just, let's just do a Star War. We're going to cut the gratuitous Bill Murray trailer spot because it serves no purpose, but we can still have a cantina.
That was
scene.
One of my fixes. Yeah. You don't need him. Don't need Bill Murray at all. I love that. Very rarely am I annoyed or disappointed to see Bill Murray in a movie, but you can cut it entirely. There are 3 B's that I'm never sad to see in a movie. Bill Murray, Batman, and boobs. But in this case, You can cut him.
Yeah, this is this cameo is the exact opposite of Zombieland. Like it is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But Alex, I'll let you take over some of these other rewrites we came up with.
So one of my thinkings is that the first Ant-Man is about passing the torch from Hank to Scott. The second one is about Hope taking over her mother's mantle as Wasp and also finding the other Wasp. So this one is about Michelle Pfeiffer's Wasp. One of the first things that happens is she actually gives a reason why they're not going into the quantum realm, why they need to turn off the radio before the hijacking happens. And she just straight up gives her speech. She says, I've been gone for 6 years. Entire civilizations can rise and fall in that time, go from Stone Age to democracy to totalitarianism, fall and rise again. And in that time, within the quantum realm, he has endured them all. I was there at his rise, saw what he did for my 50 years. I've been gone 6. I can only fear what he's done in that time. And they get sucked in. Hank gets left behind. And here's something the movie forgot that needs to be addressed. She has quantum powers. The longer she's down there, the more her powers grow. She is Obi-Waning this shit with her quantum powers. And that allows her to be the whole Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. It allows her to be Janet, Jedi. It allows Hope to be Hope Wasp, and then gives context to Hope and Janet can kind of mentor along with Scott. Like, you're stuck with us now, kid. You're going to have to do something. Now, in terms of MODOK being a goofy, stupid Darth Vader, since Cassie's afraid of the B-Man, she actually has to fight him. That is what she gets pulled away to do, is has to handle him. And that is where you don't go, stop being a dick as a solution. This is childhood trauma. This is, she was like, what, 5 or 6, and she watched her Thomas the Tank Engine get thrown around, her dad growing and shrinking, all this stuff. Why is she afraid of this guy? And now he's back, and he's just this head in armor. And that is when, she gets actually a chance to really embrace the power versus the weird goofiness that they did with him. The other 3 are fighting the Emperor. They're fighting Kang, who actually has power beyond laser, Iron Man and beams and telekinesis. So those are some of the major fixes we want.
We need to properly acknowledge that Kang is a master of time. And so he can basically give him speedster powers. He can just move from one end of the room to the other in the blink of an eye. And that's something that the movie just has no interest in telling us about, because he's a multiverse guy. He's not a time traveler, but his powers are basically just Iron Man. So it's not as interesting visually, because we've seen it for 15, 20 years now.
I wonder if they did that just because they were concerned if you overpowered him too much, it might feel less realistic that the Ant-Man powered characters can go up against that.
Yeah, that's why Janet has her Jedi powers. That's why
and
she has the quantum powers.
Sure, yeah.
It's that's part of the thing, is that it should be, is as they're starting to come into contact with him, is that if he has straight up said, I've killed you 1,000 times, he should know what their moves are. He should be able to casually be deflecting them, maybe take a hit now and then, but he knows what's coming. He's seen their interactions before across these other variants. Same thing with the Wasp, but Janet is something that he has been hunting. He's been trying to find. She is his rival, and it takes the 3 of them to actually, if they're going to defeat him, then it takes the 3 of them.
Yeah, it takes someone with equally ridiculous Kang powers, and that's Quantum Janet.
And one thing you need to acknowledge as well is that a lot of his time traveling powers, multiverse powers, are tied to technology. He can have the quantum powers that Janet has acquired, but his ability to move from one end of the room to the other, that's all tied to his chair and his suit. So once you start breaking that apart, you start seeing those kinks in the armor.
Yeah. I want to circle back to just the heart of your pitch really inspired me. Just the idea of putting MODOK first, the way Vader is kind of put forward, where you're like, wow, there's nobody scarier than Vader. And then it's like, oh, damn, he's just the right-hand man to the, like, this mecha fascist, like, and then you get way more out of MODOK, and you get this, like, intimidating build-up of what Kang can do. And so Kang isn't the villain. Kang is the giant laser to the sky that's the, evil MacGuffin of all the other movies. Like, they can't let the giant space laser go to the sky. They got to beat MODOK to stop it. Yeah. But instead of it just being a laser to the sky, it's a guy who's going to get out and, cause problems. Yeah. So I love it.
Yeah. And then the Cassie thing with MODOK as well, that could be part of the heart of Scott and Cassie's story in this movie, because if Cassie is expressing fear, Scott is obviously always afraid of losing Cassie or something happening to her. But it's the parental thing of letting go. She's grown up. I've taught her everything I need to know. It's her time to shine.
Yeah.
And then she beats up the B-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Confront those childhood traumas is great instead of playing it for laughs.
Yeah.
Speaking of playing it for laughs, my last little cut that I want to add, don't be a dick, but I am a dick. Well, don't be a dick. It wasn't great. I don't love it, but I like, fine, whatever. I like your version better for sure. Fine. If that should have been the last we saw of MODOK, but I cringed in the theater and I cringed when we watched it the other day when they come back and he's laying there all half dead and he's like, you guys, I'm your friend, right? And I help save the day because I turned code at the last minute, right? I'm basically an Avenger, right? That level of bathos was abhorrent, and it needs to be cut whole cloth.
And punctuating it with the touching of the face, like, Scott, you were a brother to me. Look at how close we are. It's so
In fairness, I believe they did mention that his yellow jacket suit was not adequately protecting his brain, and he was using Pym particles to turn it into Swiss cheese. So he's clearly not in his right mind anymore.
Oh, sure. I mean, maybe character-wise it makes sense, but it was a scene of too much bathos.
Yeah, no, for
in
sure.
a spot where it didn't need to be there.
I 100% agree with you.
There's one more thing that Alex and I added in. Because it's the MCU, we need to tie in to the larger MCU. So one thing that I think should change is getting rid of Scott's narration at the end as he's getting Cassie's cake and stuff. I think a real easy and quick fix is you do a debrief scene with him, Wong, Bruce, whoever else you want to have cameo in there. And he's just recapping the adventure they just had about defeating Kang. And because the whole Mage's Order that Wong and Doctor Strange are a part of is like part of protecting the multiverse, they would be interested in knowing this. So you would think that he would be like, hey, this guy said these things. I don't know if he was lying or if he's telling the truth. I don't know what kind of Pandora's box I opened, but we need to discuss this because this could become an Avengers problem. But they want to play it off for laughs where he's just like, nah, it's fine. But you could also just easily transition out of that because his phone alarm will go off. He's like, oh, the ice cream cake's going to melt. And like, you can have Wong just grab it from a portal, give it to him, and he goes off to the party. But I think doing a debrief with teasing who else is still in the Avengers is better than just this existential crisis monologue voiceover.
Yeah, that's sloughed off. Yeah, for a laugh. Yeah. No, valid for sure.
I like my ending. He kills Ant-Man and walks through the damn portal.
Yeah, and he's out. Yeah. It's definitely a baller move. Like it sets him up as a major threat if we lose a guy, if we lose Paul, and everyone loves Paul Rudd, and it's like, what a way to get people excited for this villain. If like, oh, we could be losing Avengers. Like this isn't this. We ain't playing.
You don't even have to lose him forever because it's a multiverse story. He can be back in another movie, just a different variant of him.
Baskin Robbins Baskin Robbins Scott saves the day.
I'm wearing normal clothes. What are you wearing? Legitimate funny line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all canny fixes for Ant-Man. They all could have gone that same way, whether it's the big, potential Scott dies, like we were teasing in the first one, or something just a little more grounded, like switching up the parties, or aping Star Wars. I think we've got some solid fixes on the table. And of course, all of our listeners had some great insights as well. Thank you to everyone who commented. We always appreciate when you chime in on social media, or best place to chime in on our Discord. Please find our link tree, get an invite to the Discord. We'd love to have you. We're talking to Josh all the time. It's a great little chat. And many others.
It's a fun community.
Alex, get in here.
Yeah, I'll work on it.
Chris comments, the hero's thing is being tiny or big, so put them in a universe with zero sense of scale? ? Needs a total rewrite. Send Ant-Man back in time or to Tokyo or something. Let Doctor Strange go to the microverse.
I liked my fix for that. I thought it was elegant to just have some adventure happening in the real world, some adventure happening in the tiny world.
Yeah.
It's really easy too with your thing, Scott, to have Cassie bump it. You know what, Scott, your fix also fixes the end of, not Secret Invasion. What's the end of the Marvels? Scott, your fix also fixes the post-credit scene in Marvels.
Oh,
cause spoiler alert, the post-credit scene in Marvels, Hawkeye, what's her name?
Kate Bishop
shows up, to Miss Marvel's house and is like, hey, there's a bunch of 20-something people with superpowers. You all want to start a backup team, more or less? And she says this line where she's like, hey, did you know Ant-Man had a daughter? And I saw a bunch of people online being like, how would she know Ant-Man has a daughter with a suit? But if at some point in Scott's version, Cassie's running around the real world, she can bump into Kate Bishop or Miss Marvel or the weird Hulk kid that
we don't talk about
to the picnic.
I will say though, Josh has a wonderful reason how Kate Bishop knows all that stuff.
Hit me.
Oh, it's because Marvel has the most amazing debriefs ever in their universe. Like there's a whole thing in WandaVision where they're talking about how, like, oh, don't you remember when when Captain Marvel headbutted Thanos? It's like, how do you know these little details? It's the most detailed debriefs ever.
Yeah, the whole recast your brother bullshit.
Jim Story comments, smaller man. I would also say make the ant the lady and make the wasp the man.
Now picturing Paul Rudd with boobs from Ant-Man 2 where he's being Michelle Pfeiffer. Stroking Hank's face.
Deuterium Ice comments, I've heard Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania described as a DLC pack, and I just can't shake that framing.
That would shock Alex.
There's definitely a lot of new characters.
Yeah, it's and it looks very video gamey in a lot of places. So
a lot of new skins for that game.
Yeah. Look, if Disney could fit loot boxes into their movies, I'm sure they would do it.
Oh Lord, don't give them ideas.
No. Warner Brothers would do that first.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Someone didn't play Marvel's Avengers.
Jeff Samsono says, Ant-Man worked when its story was smaller, pun intended, but making this one about the multiverse gobbledygook made it hard to get through. And that's an extra waste of time now that Marvel has to pivot away from their big bad from here into the IRL verse, rightfully so. Oof. Just doing a rescue mission across the weird and wild miniverse could have been fun.
You know, I will say this. Just recast the guy. Just cast someone else as Kang. You don't have to go back to the drawing board. You've recast characters before and just carried on. People understand the reason why. No one's going to question why he has a different face. Also,
you know what?
He's a time-traveling multiverse guy. He can have a different face.
I'm probably not the first person to think of this, but I truly came to this organically just now. You know who they should replace him with? Is Terrence Howard.
Yep. That'd be the ultimate.
And don't explain it.
So
don't explain it.
from what I understand, the real world implications, I don't know how this works from a legal standpoint, but from what I understand, the agent for the Kang actor had been bragging about how he locked in the actor to be the only guy to play the role. So they couldn't get a variant that's a different person or anything like that for an Easter egg. Only that person could play any variant. And I don't know how that works in a legal situation where they're being found guilty of domestic abuse. Mm-hmm. I feel like that should null and void the contract and they can just do whatever they want to do with the character. But I'm wondering if they're just not like afraid of the discussion that happens around the recast of that character now. So they're just we're just going to move on.
I would be shocked if Disney did not have ethics clauses in their contract.
Yeah.
They almost certainly
I think
have the
they
morality clauses. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they famously do. So I would think that this would be something that, and it's Disney. They have Disney money to throw at lawyers. I think they can take on a Hollywood agent.
Yeah, and I'm sure a payoff for something like that would be minimal for what it would cost to just completely revamp what they're doing with the multiverse saga. So I don't know, but that's what I have heard through the grapevine.
Andrew Craig says, when that version of MODOK is one of the best things about your movie, you should know you have a problem.
Ooh.
Yeah. I appreciate the swing and the miss with MODOK. I guess I'll leave it at that.
You have to appreciate the big swing.
Yeah, it didn't work, but you know what? How do you translate MODOK to screen? Those cowards in the first X-Men movie were too afraid to bring yellow suits onto screen, and these guys had the audacity to get MODOK up there. Kudos for the attempt.
That's a great perspective and a very fair point.
It's taken 25 years to put Wolverine in the yellow outfit, but it's finally happening this summer.
Yeah. I remember, I'm sorry to derail from the listener comments, but I remember a friend of mine had a huge fit back in 2015 or 2014. Yeah, I think it was 2014 when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, because he's like, how the hell is Rocket Raccoon making it to the big screen before Wonder Woman?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just they got the guts, they got the gumption, and it's lasted him a very long time, Mr. Feige. He's got a lot of goodwill, and it's starting to peter out. Speaking of Peter, this guy's named Olav. Olav Rockney says the appeal of the first two Ant-Man movies was that they were a little more low-key, not the fate of the world. There's literally not a single non-superpowered character in this movie. So first off, this movie needs stakes that are comprehensible to the audience.
I mean, that's fair. And we've discussed it before on this show that one of the better MCU movies is Spider-Man Homecoming. And again, the stakes in that movie are a dude is trying to steal Tony Stark's plane. It's not world ending. It's not earth shattering, but because it's personal to Peter, we feel for it. And you can do that with a neighborhood level superhero like Ant-Man. Yeah. Who does thief stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be, even the stuff in the second movie with Ghost wasn't that high stakes. It was just a personal thing involving like Hank's past and someone who is out for revenge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Stakes don't need to be large. They just need to be well understood. That's
I think part of what a big complaint that people have for this movie is, he's a street level hero who has been thrust into this multiverse problem. And I think there's an interesting story and perspective you can have with that. And the movie just doesn't care to go into that detail.
Not particularly.
But I don't think the argument of Ant-Man's a street level character who gets big, gets small. Why are you having him go against a godlike character? I don't think that's a fair argument that's in good faith, because you can do something interesting with that. This movie just didn't do it.
No, it does not. Sorry, I didn't mean to sell Ant-Man, pun intended, short there.
Uh-huh.
Massiveverse Central commented, one thing that comes to mind is change the ending so that while Hank, Janet, and Cassie make it back, Scott and Hope are still trapped in the quantum realm, which gives Cassie motive to try to rescue her father.
Massiveverse, why end with that when you can do what I did and start with that?
Cody commented, it felt like two movies, so I'd First, pick one. Personally, I choose the first half where it's the weird sci-fi with monsters. Make it exploratory. No more Kang. Don't even have a villain. Focus on the characters literally finding themselves now that they've drifted apart.
It's a little more your guys' pitch right there, kind of.
I saw that one on Twitter, and I was like, yeah, let's just do Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Like, that's fun, too.
Yeah.
It has a giant ant. We just need a lawnmower, and we are done.
And a scorpion.
And it's got the humor that would jive with the other two movies.
Yeah.
Like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but superpower? Yeah.
And you can have MODOK. He's a giant head that tries to eat them as their cereal.
Yeah.
He's got blades that can be like a lawnmower.
Yeah. Tack says, all right, this is going to hurt, but let's just cut out everything that doesn't work and go from there. Cut MODOK. Cut Kang. Cut Ant-Man's family. Cut Ant-Man. Cut the Quantum Realm. Cut the MCU.
So we're keeping Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm down with that. I said that was my favorite part of the movie.
Well, Alex, you're forgetting we're losing a big chunk of our content for our podcast.
Oh, damn.
Tack continues, let's, all joking aside, let's make an original movie about a father and daughter who are suddenly transported to an alien world and must play their political disagreements through influencing the political landscape during impending revolutionary war. That's cute. I like that a lot. After being traumatically separated from each other, the father tries to avert the war that will endanger the life of his daughter, while the daughter tries to instigate war so that he can free himself from the atrocity. They both grow to appreciate the true stakes and their effects their actions could have and find their own way to tear down fascism. And a lot of crazy sci-fi things along the way. Doesn't have to be very jokey, but should be a fun adventure movie.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
I feel like I've seen that movie.
Is that like John Carter of Mars?
Yeah, it's kind of like John Carter of Mars, yeah. Huh.
Call it Scott Lang of the Quantum Realm.
Yeah.
And we're calling this the end of the episode. Josh, Alex, thank you so much for joining us once again. Always a joy to have you. Where can folks find Talking SMAC, SMACK?
You can find us on...
Okay, that's the whole point. Sorry.
You can find us on Twitter at Talking SMAC Pod, SMAC, as well as pretty much any other social media platform, including TikTok. I have fallen off making videos, but it's still something that I would like to expand into. But you can also find us on your favorite podcatcher. Just make sure you're going for the yellow and red Talking SMAC, SMAC, and not the green and black one. That is a sports podcast, which I am not against sports. I love sports, but that's not us. We want your downloads.
Do they have a K? Are they Talking SMAC, SMACK?
Nope, they're SMAC as well. I think they
What is
started,
their acronym?
I don't even know. I don't think they advertise it on their on their thumbnail. I wonder if it's like their hosts.
Oh, maybe. And you can, of course, follow us. I have some notes, facebook.com/I have some notes, at I have some notes on X, or again, just come to ihavesomenotes.com where there's a link tree, and the best link you could click is our Discord server. Or if you only get to click one more thing today, please click that subscribe or rate or review button on your podcatcher of choice.
Yeah, you can also click on over to patreon.com/I have some notes right now if you'd like to give us a little monthly financial support. That helps keep the lights on around here. There are a few sweet bonuses that we throw to our patrons, Patreoners regularly.
Patroneers, I love it.
So if you want to get in on that, you can go check that out right now.
And everybody wants some, or I have some notes, where in 2 weeks we'll be taking on Everybody Wants Some.
Until then, I've been Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Grey Beaver. Keep watching the skies, and trans rights are human rights. Fuck Daniel Smith.